viewers. We praise God for you. We wish you a happy Easter and a glorious Resurrection Sunday. We pray that in some small way we planted a seed in your life, that you might have a closer relationship with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. If you're looking for a church home or just visiting Philadelphia, we welcome you to come over here to the Erie Avenue Baptist Church at 540 West Erie Avenue in Philadelphia, PA, where everybody is somebody. Christ is the head. You're welcome.
Amen.
Hallelujah, somebody.
Hallelujah.
I want to thank Minister Sowell for the reading of the word found in the Gospel of St. John, the 20th chapter. He's read several verses within that chapter. I'm going to read the very last verse, 20:31, where it says, "But these are written, that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you might have life through his name." We thank God for his blessed word, and we pray that he bless the hearts of those that have heard it. Amen. If I was to use the subject today, it would simply be this: he rose for us. He rose for us. You know, all across this world, people are celebrating Easter. Even as they celebrated Easter inside the Conica, where they had the bombing, to just have the audacity to take lives on a day that celebrates the rising of our city. It escapes my imagination. And I realized that throughout this great city today, throughout this nation, people will be preaching about the Resurrection Sunday. They'll be preaching to people that they've only seen on this day. And so we have an opportunity to share, to enlighten, and also to instruct.
Thank you, Lord.
Because as we come together to celebrate Resurrection Sunday, the day that we call Easter, it's important that we be mindful of what was endured for us. Some of us go through some stuff. But there was some stuff that was endured for us. Some of us are dealing with varied afflictions. Some of us have what some would describe as unsufferable pain. Y'all know what that is, right? That's when sometimes that pain gets so great that it's just unbearable. But there was one that endured more than we could ever imagine. And so today we become mindful of the importance of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Mindful of the importance of the fact that yet he lives. And most of all, mindful of the fact that he did it so that you and I could have life. Yes, in this life that we live, we may be tried on every side. We might find ourselves facing varied afflictions and pain, and we may toil in this life that we live. In this life that we live, there will be times that relationships will be strained. Finances will be tight. You're going to even have some sleepless nights. But nothing can compare to what Jesus endured for us. Allow me to paint a picture of pain and suffering that I'm reminded of, to remember what Jesus endured for me. I said I just want to have a fireside chat, but it seems like the preacher's trying to come out anyway. But in order for me to appreciate his resurrection, I truly have to appreciate what he endured. I have to appreciate his death and his burial.
Thank you.
Picture in your mind, if you will, that after the arrest in the middle of the night, Jesus is brought before the Sanhedrin and Caiaphas and the high priest, and it is here the first physical trauma is inflicted.
Oh, yeah.
A soldier strikes Jesus across the face for remaining silent when questioned by Caiaphas.
I know.
The palace guards then blind him with a cloth and taunt him to identify them as they pass by. They start spitting on him, striking him in the face, and pulling out his beard. Don't you know that spitting on someone was the lowest form of disgrace to a person in that time? Furthermore, while we do not know exactly how many guards participated, we know from history that the palace guard consists of 900 to 1,200 soldiers. Think about that. Even if only 10% participated, can you imagine how Jesus looked after they smacked him across his face? Even if only 10% participated, Jesus endured a lot of shame. He endured a lot of disgrace. And he endured a lot of pain at the hands of these soldiers. In the early morning, Jesus, battered and bruised, dehydrated and exhausted from a sleepless night, is taken across Jerusalem to the fortress of Antonia, the seat of the government of the curator of Judah, Pontius Pilate. Pilate tries to pass the responsibility to Herod. Jesus apparently suffered no harm at the hands of Herod in his return to Pilate. It was then in response to the cries of the mob that Pilate ordered Barabbas released and condemned Jesus to scourging and crucifixion. I want you to picture in your mind the bloody face of Jesus as blood streamed down his face from them pulling out his beard and striking him. Standing, preparing for a scourging. As preparation for the scourge to carry out, Jesus is stripped of his clothing. His hands are tied to a post above his head so that the flesh of the shoulders and the back are stretched to the limit. The Jews had an ancient law prohibiting more than 40 lashes, which is why Paul several times only received 39. But the Romans made no attempt to follow Jewish law in this matter, and Jesus probably received many more. When the back of Jesus' beard is stretched tight, a Roman legionnaire steps forward with a flagrum. Sometimes it's called a flagrum. In our day, we call it a cat and nine tail. For those who know, a cat and nine tail is leather straps that are stripped with little balls on the back of them. Now, in our day, we didn't have the balls. I don't know about y'all, but see, I know how the cat and nine tail, so I could feel Jesus' pain because he had balls attached to the leather. When I was young, I remember my mama stripping the belt, creating her own cat and nine tail. That was my first familiarity with a cat and nine tail. And so in my finite mind, I can picture Jesus as they came. It came with this short whip consisting of 9 heavy leather thongs, each with very small lead balls embedded with the bits of glass and stone and bone attached to the very ends of it. And the heavy whip is brought down with full force again and again on the shoulders and on the back and on the legs of Jesus. And at first, the heavy thongs cut through the skin only. And then as the blows continue, they cut deeper into the subcutaneous tissue and producing first an oozing of blood from the capillaries and the veins of the skin, and finally spurting arterial bleeding from vessels in the underlying muscles. The small balls of lead, bits of glass and stone produce large, deep bruises which are broken open by subsequent blows.
Yeah.
Eventually,
Have mercy.
the skin on the back, it hangs
Yes, Lord.
in long ribbons.
Have mercy.
In the entire area, it is unrecognizable mass of torn, bleeding tissue. The blows do not hit just the back either. When the long strands of the cat and nine-tail strike, they wrap around the victim's body and dig into the front and sides of the body. Then the cat and nine-tail is quickly pulled back, violently ripping and tearing the flesh off the body. Sometimes, in the process, the victim would have ribs broken by the lead balls. And this probably did not happen with Jesus, since it was prophesied that none of his bones would be broken. When it is determined by the centurion in charge that the prisoner is near death, the beating is finally stopped. And now, the half-fainted Jesus is then untied and allowed to slump to the stone pavement, soaked with his own blood. And the Roman soldier sees an opportunity to make a joke out of him. Here is a provincial Jew claiming to be a king, but was now barely alive. And so they threw a robe across his shoulders, and they placed a stick in his hand for a scepter. To make the travesty complete, a small bundle of flexible branches covered with long thorns are woven into the shape of a crown and then pressed into his scalp. And since his head wounds always bleed a lot, the blood started running down his face and into his eyes. And after mocking him and striking him across the face, the soldiers take the scepter from his hand and they strike him on the head, which drive the thorns deeper into his scalp. And after they tired of their sadistic sport, the robe is torn from his back. He had already adhered to the clots of blood and ribbons of flesh on his back and had begun to dry in the hot mid-eastern sun. And the tearing of the robe from his back, just like the careless removal of a surgical bandage from a wound, causing excruciating pain as wounds reopened and more flesh was torn from him. This is what he endured for us. Most artists do not even come close in depicting what Jesus looked like after all the torture. He was probably the most inhumane looking thing that you ever seen. The prophet Isaiah wrote of the Messiah, "They shall see the servant of God beaten and bloody, an object of horror. So disfigured, many are astonished. His face and his whole appearance were marred more than any man's. One would scarcely know it was a person." That was recorded in Isaiah 52 and 14. But that wasn't enough. He endured even more for us. The soldiers then took the heavy crossbar of a cross and tied it roughly to Jesus' shoulders. They walked slowly through the crowded streets. Some people jeered and mocked. Others shrank back in horror. In spite of his efforts to walk erect, the weight of the heavy wooden beam, together with the shock produced by the blood loss, is too much for Jesus, and he frequently stumbles and falls. And when he does so, the rough wood of the beam gouges into his lacerated skin and muscles of his shoulders and sends splinters deep into his skin. And at one point, he tries to rise, but human muscles have been pushed beyond the endurance. The centurion, anxious to get on with the crucifixion, selected stalwart North African onlooker Simon of Cyrene to carry the crossbeam. Jesus follows behind, still bleeding and sweating the cold, clammy sweat of shock. And after the 650-yard journey from the fortress Antonia to Golgotha is complete, now the crucifixion began. He endured this for us. Prior to nailing Jesus to the cross, he is offered wine mixed with myrrh. This was a mild anesthesia, and it was intended to help numb the pain that he might find himself in. But Jesus refused to drink. Simon is ordered to place the cross on the ground. Jesus is roughly thrown backward upon it with his shoulders against the wood, and the legionnaire feels for the depression at the front of the wrist, placing a spike in the depression and quickly driving a heavy square wrought iron nail through the wrist deep into the wood. He moves to the other side and he repeats the action, making sure he does not pull the arm too tightly. The crossbar of a cross is then hoisted to the top of a stake bar, and the label is nailed into place. Here is the King of Jews. The left foot is now pressed backward against the right foot, and with both feet extended, toes down, a nail is driven through the arch of each, leaving the knees moderately flexed. Death by crucifixion now began. And as Jesus slowly sags down with the weight of his body on the nails through his wrist, excruciating, fiery pain shoots along the most sensitive nerves ending in the body, called the median nerves, and travels along the fingers and up the arms to explode in the brain. And at this point, another phenomenon occurs. As the arms fatigue, great waves of cramps sweep over the muscles, knotting them in deep, relentless, driving pain. With these cramps come the inability to push himself upward. Hanging by his arm, the pectoral muscles are paralyzed, and the intercostal muscles are unable to act. And he can draw air into the lungs, but it cannot be exalted. Exhaled, Jesus fight to raise himself in order to get even one short breath. Finally, carbon dioxide builds up in the lungs and bloodstream, and the cramps partially subside. Spasmodically, it is able to push himself up to exhale and to bring in more life-giving oxygen. In doing so, however, comes at a price. But he endured this for us. To get a breath and relieve the pain in his arms and chest, he pushes himself upward, placing his full weight on the nail through his feet, and the searing agony transfers from his wrists to his feet, tearing through the nerves between the metastral bones of the feet. Nevertheless, he gets a breath and he sags back down. And it is undoubtedly during this period of breathing that he utters the 7 last words which are recorded in the Gospels. When air is so precious and each breath so painfully won, he still uses that breath to communicate with his people who are near. And after saying it is finished, his mission of atonement is nearly complete. Finally, he can allow his body to die. With one last surge of strength, he presses his torn feet against the nail string and straightens his legs and looks into heaven and utters his 7th last word when he said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. While it generally took about 2 or 3 days for a crucified victim to die on the cross, due to the loss of blood and compression upon his heart, due to the lungs filled with fluid, Jesus died in about 6 hours. And though he had died, this was not the end of the story. For he rested in a borrowed tomb all day Friday. He rested in a borrowed tomb all day Saturday. But I'm so glad that early Sunday morning, This is why we're here today celebrating, folks, because early Sunday morning, Jesus got up from the grave. And what I like is he didn't just get up, but he got up with all power in his hands. And Mary and them got up early in the morning. And they started on their way. And they wanted to prepare his body. But when they got there, the body was gone. Mary ran to get Peter and the others. And they came back and he was gone. And it says that after they got there, and they didn't see nothing, said Peter and them on their way. But Mary stood alone all by herself. And she was a weeping. And as she wept, Jesus came unto her. And he asked her, why do you weep? And she said, because my master done died. But he said, no, your master still lives. Go tell them. He's telling you and me, go tell them that he is risen. He said, let them know that I have not ascended unto my Father yet, but I will meet them. He rose as God. The power of the resurrection. And I'm glad to tell you today that you and I, we have that power. We have power over our afflictions. We have power over our adversity. We have power over our pain. We have power over our problems. We have power over our situation. We have power over us. Because it is Jesus that we find comfort. We find strength. Why? Because just like the disciples, Jesus, he breathed the Holy Spirit on us. And as he breathed the Holy Spirit, he said, my peace I leave with you. His peace, he lives with us. And all we have to do is believe in the resurrection power. John 20:31 says, but these are written, that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you might have life in his name. I might have been in bed all week, and I struggled breathing. Sometimes you feel like you're smothered. I don't know if anybody understands what I'm saying when you're grasping for air. And my wife saying, do we need to go back to the hospital? I said, no, I'm going to be all right because God got a word for Sunday. And I know that he's going to help me to stand. She said, are you going to sit down today? I said, no, Minister Sowell, because I got the power of the resurrection. And he gives me peace. Even when my lungs are filled, he allowed me to share his word. Glory to his name. For he's worthy. And so I let me know that because of the power of the resurrection, I can keep on pressing. Because of the power of the resurrection, I can keep on shouting. Because of the power. One day, that same Jesus who ascended back to heaven, he's coming back. Coming back in all his power and all his glory. He's coming back for he prepared people. People without a spot. No blemish. For people that held true. In the midst of whatever they were going through, they just gave him the glory. The people that never failed. But they stood. He said, stand, and again I said, stand. If you're dealing with something today, I say to you, stand. You're not in this thing by yourself. How do I know? We sung the song. Because he lives. I can face tomorrow. Because he lives. All of my fears are removed. When I see Jesus. Amen. When I see the man that died for me. Amen. When I, oh Lord have mercy, that keeps me. My soul cries. Hallelujah. Because he's been so good to me. Jesus, he rose for us. Woo! Don't you know you got power over your situation? Oh, nobody mad but the devil. Trying to slow me down, Sister Iris. I know he's upset right now. But my God, he is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. My hope rests on him, for he is the author and the finisher of my faith. And no good thing will he withhold from them that live according to his purpose. Will you trust him today? Will you trust him today? He rose